Have you ever wondered why every phone in your life runs either iOS or Android? The short answer is that these two systems didn't just win the market, they reshaped it so completely that nobody else really had a chance to catch up. Let's break down how that happened and why the duopoly still holds almost the entire global market today. First, the big picture. iOS and Android control around 96 to 99% of the mobile operating system market. That number alone tells you how locked in the ecosystem has become. But it didn't start that way. The early mobile world was full of competing systems like Symbian, BlackBerry OS, Windows CE, and a handful of smaller experimental platforms. Back then, phone software felt like the Wild West, and no single company had a roadmap for what we now think of as a modern smartphone. The turning point came in 2007 when the iPhone showed up. It wasn't the first phone with a touchscreen, but it was the first phone that made touch actually feel natural. Apple ditched physical keyboards, pushed the capacitive touchscreen, and introduced a design meant for fingers, not styluses. But the real shift happened in 2008 when Apple launched the App Store. For the first time, developers had a simple way to build apps, publish them, and reach millions of users instantly. This created a massive wave of software innovation, and people started to expect their phones to behave more like tiny computers. Google saw this shift happening fast. In 2008, they released Android as an open-source operating system built for touch and built for the future app economy. That open model changed everything. Instead of building one phone like Apple, Google allowed basically any hardware company to use Android. Samsung, HTC, Motorola, Sony, and dozens of smaller brands jumped in. This flooded the market with Android devices across every budget and screen size. If you wanted a $120 smartphone or a high-end flagship, Android had something for you. That diversity made its market share explode. Once iOS and Android became the dominant platforms, they locked users in with ecosystems. These ecosystems are sometimes called walled gardens. Apple built a world where your iPhone talks perfectly with your MacBook, iPad, Apple Watch, AirPods, and iMessage. Everything is smooth as long as you stay inside the walls. Google did something similar on Android, using services like Gmail, YouTube, Google Maps, and Google Photos. The more you used their apps, the harder it felt to switch to anything else. This ecosystem lock-in is a huge reason the duopoly is still unbroken. Even if a new company built a brand new operating system today, they'd face an impossible barrier. They wouldn't be allowed to ship the apps people depend on. Apple doesn't develop its apps for competing platforms. Google doesn't license its apps to new operating systems. That means any new phone would launch without Gmail, YouTube, Google Maps, Chrome, or the Play Store. It would also launch without iMessage, FaceTime, or Apple services. Most users would never switch to a device missing the apps they use every day. This leads to another problem for new competitors: app ecosystems. Developers build apps for iOS and Android because that's where users are. If a new operating system had only 1 or 2% of the market, developers wouldn't want to spend time rebuilding their apps for it. That leaves new platforms with tiny app stores, which makes them even less appealing. It becomes a loop that's almost impossible to break. We've seen big companies try. BlackBerry, once the king of mobile email, tried to reinvent itself with BlackBerry 10, but by the time it launched, users wanted touchscreen apps, social media, and entertainment, not physical keyboards and secure messaging. Without support from major app developers, the platform faded out. Amazon tried something different with the Fire Phone. The problem wasn't hardware. The problem was that Amazon couldn't get Google apps. A phone without Google Maps, Gmail, or YouTube wasn't something most people wanted. And because Amazon's own services already existed on iOS and Android, nobody needed a special Amazon phone to shop or stream. Microsoft's Windows Phone might be the clearest example. Many people loved its clean design, but it couldn't succeed without Google's help. Google didn't build official YouTube or Gmail apps for it, and users weren't willing to switch to a platform missing the basics. Developers also ignored it because its market share stayed low, so the App Store never grew. All these failures prove one thing: it's not enough to build a good operating system. You have to build something so much better than iOS or Android that millions of people choose to abandon their apps, habits, and devices. That's nearly impossible. At this point, iOS and Android aren't just operating systems, they're entire digital lifestyles. They run our messages, photos, passwords, calendars, banking apps, streaming apps, and daily workflows. People upgrade their phones, but they don't switch platforms unless they have a very strong reason. This is why the duopoly will likely continue. There's no room to build a third system unless the next shift in technology changes everything again. Instead of fighting iOS or Android, most experts think a new platform would only succeed by replacing the smartphone itself. Something like AR glasses or mixed reality devices could eventually take that role. If our main computing device changes, then the software powering it might change too. For now, iOS and Android dominate because they earned massive early momentum, built ecosystems that trap users in comfortable ways, secured control over essential apps, and blocked competitors not by force but by convenience. It's not a conspiracy, it's just the result of years of innovation, timing, and the simple fact that most people don't like switching platforms.